we're going to take a ride. This bus is going to take us to Mason Street, which is one side of your handout. We're going to get off the bus at Mason Street. We're going to walk that series of 3 roundabouts. These series of 3 roundabouts we have out here, there are 2 ramp terminals, and then one is on a parallel road to 41. So Highway 41 is this was recently designated interstate. At the time of the project construction, it was not an interstate. So within the last couple of years, U.S. Highway 41 became Interstate 41. But at the time when we designed and constructed 41, we designed it and constructed it anticipating eventually becoming an interstate, so to interstate standards. That particular interchange we're going to go to today was constructed in one of the projects, which included mainline. It was a $30 million project, which included the Highway 41 under the roundabouts, the 3 roundabouts together. That work cost about $12 million at the time. That project took about 6 months to build. The entire interchange was closed to do that. It was agreed with the businesses in that area to close the interchange. So it was closed on February 1st, 2012, and opened again July of 2012. The roundabouts are designed with pedestrians in mind, so the crosswalks are designed in a way that you're not looking across traffic, but you're looking in the direction of traffic. A lot of the crossings are 2-stage crossings, so some of the things to look for. Also, some of the design aspects that we have, and Bash will talk a little more about some of this too, is the concrete has a different color in some spots, or different textures. For visually impaired folks, they have truncated domes for visual impairment, for the pick it up for folks to see it and feel it with canes if they're visually impaired. And then also they have like a raised curb in some of the islands to direct the pedestrians where to go, so they don't get lost in the islands. And then further down, we're not going to go this far through the roundabout, but there is a transit stop. So the transit route number 6, which is a fairly main route on Green Bay Transit, runs east-west through the roundabouts, and we constructed a bus bump out in that west of the westernmost roundabout, because there's a medical clinic nearby, and we had a lot of folks using Green Bay Transit to get out there. That bus bump out pulls out of traffic. It's kind of in the terrace area. The bus pulls completely out of traffic, so the bus isn't stopped in traffic in a lot of places where we had in the past. And then at the transit stop, folks can get on a lot easier and safer for the buses then to get merged back into traffic. Any questions?
ADT on Mason Street is roughly about 30,000. And on 41, we're talking between 65 and 70,000.
Another aspect that we have, and you kind of notice as we're stopped here, this is a bike lane, bike route as well through here. That was one of the other aspects that we included in the roundabout design. At this time, we don't have bike lanes leading to the roundabouts, but the roundabouts are constructed so that bicyclists, when they are coming to the roundabouts, and when the bike lanes do get to that stretch of the Mason Street interchange, they have to make a decision. I don't know if anybody talked about that today, but one of the design components for bikes is you have a choice. You can take the roundabout as a pedestrian, and so you take and slip off. There's a bike slip off lane. You slip off the roundabout, and then you're to walk your bike on the sidewalk. And the sidewalk is wider than the traditional sidewalk. Sidewalks are typically designed at 5 feet. These pedestrian accommodations around the roundabouts are 8 to 10 feet, so they're trail width. Bicyclists if they make the decision to pull off and take the bike slip lane, they get off, they walk as a pedestrian through the series of roundabouts, and then you can get back onto to Mason Street as a cyclist, because there's another slip lane on the other far western end of the roundabout. So there's not one at each one of the roundabouts. It's at the far eastern end and the far western end of the roundabout. So the three work together in a series. So you're not coming on and off the highway. You make a decision at the eastern end, make a decision at the western end. And if you decide to take it as a vehicle, because bicycles in the state of Wisconsin are considered a vehicle, you at that point then command the lane. You take that lane of traffic as a vehicle, and you ride through that roundabout just like you're a vehicle. You yield at the yield line, and then you can proceed through the roundabout just like a vehicle. So you have two choices as a cyclist to go through there. Try to think.
Project, and some of the areas for longer mounts or the overhang is we have sleeves that we would put in for our signs. So as those permits come through and as those vehicles come through, they can pull our signs out so they can overhang some of our islands and make sure that they can make all of the turns.
Well, maybe we'll start with this. Anyone have any observations of these roundabouts? Easy? Anyone walk around blindfolded?
People are definitely accepting lower gaps.
Right, accepting lower gaps. Yeah.
Noisy.
Well, so let's let me
Very
do
noisy, yeah.
a quick, just in terms of the advertising. I'm sending a handout around that talks a little bit about this NCHRP report 834, and there's a URL at the bottom of that, intersectionaccess.org, which just went live like 2 days ago. So. And we'll advertise some of the training courses that we're going to do across the country on this, specific to roundabout and channelized turn lane accessibility. But let's talk through these four components, right? So finding the crossing, aligning to cross, making a decision of when it's safe to cross, and maintaining alignment during crossing. So any observations about the first one, finding the crosswalk? Was that easy? Was that difficult? Pretty easy. But so finding the crossing, the landscape buffer is really a huge help, right? So somebody with a cane could trail the edge of the landscaping, look for the break in the landscaping, and we're seeing it right here if you look out the right window. So that landscaping, you can trail that left edge, and then it turns, and then it leads you to the detectable warning. So it's really a great configuration here. Also, the fact that detectable warnings span the entire width of the crossing, so that's really important so that you don't miss them. They're 2 feet in depth, which is really important so that you don't step over them. So that's where the 2 feet comes from, right? So that typically our gate, as you're walking, 2 feet means you'll hit it at some point. So the landscaping makes it really easy to find the crossing. But as we go through this, look at what happens to the landscaping when we get to the interstate bridge. And I understand that there's not a whole lot of soil on the interstate bridge here to plant grass and all that. But so it poses some challenges for wayfinding, right?
Thanks, Larry. This is awesome.
Awesome, yeah.
I just asked him to go through here. So this is what you can do. You
National Lampoon.
just take 41 south, then. Yep. Good to go. Perfect.
All right.
Maybe
Thank you.
Put like a brick pattern or something in what would have been the landscape.
Yeah. So a brick pattern.
Look, kids,
some of
big
the brick patterns.
Exactly.
Some of the stamped concrete and brick patterns are going to be really difficult to detect. Think about if you're blind and how you're going to distinguish a stamped brick pattern like what's here in the center island from just cracked pavement.
They do have a nice wall,
right?
to hug. So
certainly having the wall there. You could use hardscaping, loose gravel, those kinds of treatments. Like Arizona, for example, states like that, they use a lot of that surface anyways. You could also do a fence, so if you're right-of-way constrained and you don't have room for the landscape buffer, having a fence, it poses its own maintenance challenges as it gets hit and you have to replace it, but that can help with finding the crosswalk. So aligning to cross, any observations there? And that's kind of what you had said about
Sorry?
the aligning to cross, the,
Yep.
you know, that, I think that worked really, really well at those sites, right? Because as you get to the detectable warning, it's a straight shot across. You know, a lot of times though, especially if the detectable warnings are closer to the roundabout where you still have some curvature, they end up pointing you in the wrong direction, right? And so sometimes agencies will go in and mark the crosswalk, you know, the paint to where you're supposed to cross, but the detectable warnings still point you the other directions. It's definitely something to look out for at roundabouts, as well as other intersections as well. So what about the third, deciding when it's safe to cross? Did anyone try and detect gaps and yields? Was that easy? Was that difficult?
It's easier with just the vast amount of
Yeah.
Like if you were a single pedestrian out there,
Right.
it'd be a little more difficult.
Yeah, so the yielding was pretty good.
Just
You
we're all
felt, yeah.
standing there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Far side is much more difficult than near side.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Saw that.
So a lot of times we're seeing that the yielding at entries of roundabouts is a lot higher than exits, which makes sense, right? So vehicles slow down at entry, they're looking for gaps anyways, might as well yield to a pedestrian, right? At the exit, you're accelerating, leaving the roundabout, so a lot of times the exits are more challenging. What about the noise level at this site? It's high, right? So this site is a really, really challenging one because of the interstate close by, right? So this roundabout in a, you know, more conventional urban or suburban environment would have been a totally different crossing environment. So sometimes, unfortunately, even great designs are going to pose accessibility challenges if there's a lot of background noise, right? So when you have to make decisions based on hearing and you have background noise, that's going to make it very challenging. So that was definitely a challenge at this site. You know, no fault to any designer, anyone, you know, any agencies. It's just the noise level. So for a site like this, you know, an audible treatment could really be helpful to help overcome some of those things. You know, it's nowhere in the access board guidelines currently. It is something, though, we're talking about in this report that really noise can throw everything off, right? So that's something to consider. And then the last component, maintaining alignment, you know, I think that worked really well at this site too, right? So at roundabouts in general, the crossings are short. If you're aligned correctly, maintaining alignment across two lanes is relatively straightforward. Having a wide crossing with the detectable warning spanning the entire width, that can be helpful, so that when you get to that receiving end, you know you're done with the crossing, and then again you have that curb cut through the island that then guides you to the next crossing location. Any other observations about those sites and differences, things that were challenging or interesting? Yeah.
I thought it was more intimidating than I expected crossing the exiting leg.
Yeah.
I think because of the proximity to the circle, even though I guess it was a full vehicle length away from the circle, it's still on the ground. It felt a lot closer than it looks like on paper.
Yeah.
So even if it was even offset a little bit more, it would have felt a little more.
When vehicles are going to start accelerating as they're trying to start getting up to interstate speed, they're anticipating getting up there. Well, then all of a sudden, oh, there's a pedestrian right here.
Right.
Now I have to slow down.
Yeah.
You're coming around that
Right.
curve, and all of a sudden, bam, they're right there.
Yeah.
So we try and get that pedestrian out a little bit further out into that, you know, into that detectable warning field, even so you're out visible enough. Not always wearing a yellow vest. You know, so those are things that help kind of enhance a little bit too.
There's a real trade-off. We've seen a few sites where the exit crossing is too close to the circulating lane, where yielding is almost zero. Because think of yourself as a driver, are you going to yield to a pedestrian if you have a risk of being rear-ended or the circulating vehicle clipping the back of your vehicle? You're not going to stop voluntarily, right? So moving it far enough out to allow a safe place for the vehicle to stop is going to be really important. While still maintaining the speed control of the roundabout. So if you go too far out, you have higher speeds.
One of the things I'm going to point out here real quick while we're coming through here. Sorry if you don't mind.
There you go. Yeah.
One of the things I just want to point out as we're going through this roundabout section here, another series of roundabouts, you'll notice that the detectable warning fields are yellow here, and also these crosswalk areas are red. So it kind of varies a little bit. These crosswalks, like we said, it kind of picks up that, you know, the other one was gray, this one's red. It's just that little offset, different color to kind of pull it together. So
Yeah, excellent. Any other observations about the site where it's at?
The ramp, because you have a two-stage crossing. You're
Yeah.
so used to you get to the island, you look left.
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
And that, you know, I mean, you look at it,
Yeah.
it's getting a little confusing for a blind person.
Yeah. That's a really a key difference at any interchange ramp terminal, especially with multiple lanes, is typically when you come to a roundabout, you go to an entry. Traffic comes from your left, you get to the splitter island, traffic comes from your right. The crossing we just did, we had 2 exits, right? Traffic was coming from your left twice, or it might be coming from your right twice. So that's a very challenging thing. We haven't really figured out how to communicate that. Other than through an audible device. So we've actually seen Kansas City and some of their diverging diamonds are starting to use audible messages that include directionality of traffic. Right, where it basically says walk sign is on, traffic coming from your left. So that is possible. The speech message can be recorded in a custom way, and so even in RFB you could have that message that says the yellow lights are flashing, traffic coming from your left, or something along those lines. So may not stop. Yes, vehicles may not stop. Yeah. Right. So red crosswalk is not going to help a blind person, right? So the from an accessibility perspective, it likely has an right. So it likely has an effect in terms of making it more conspicuous. It sometimes has a maintenance concern, but yeah, distinguishing the color somehow from the splitter island is desirable to where even other pedestrians know the difference.
One of the benefits of that red crossing though is that you notice the paint, the white paint that delineates the outside of that crosswalk scrapes off with the snowplows, and so you have to paint it more often. When you color that concrete, a lot of times they'll pave the whole thing, cut out that crosswalk, and then pour in that red colored concrete. Well, that color stays. It fades a little bit, but it doesn't scrape off like that paint does. So you don't have to repaint it as often either.
So at a certain depth.
It's probably at full depth. It's
okay.
full depth.
Full
It's,
depth. Okay.
They'll pave the whole thing and then cut that out and put it in there.